Welcome to the Intro to Photoshop lesson. This is the welcome screen when you launch. You can see it says welcome to Photoshop thing. Okay, so this window is my home. It has a little link to all the tutorials, what's new, all the last documents I had open. Okay, we have a tab that takes us to, we can learn. It's got all kinds of tutorials, online video tutorials, online tutorials. You got your work, your work. My Lightroom photos. So it takes me to my Lightroom photos, and these Lightroom photos are stored on Adobe server. Okay, that's a whole nother question and a whole nother lesson. That's why I have access to these. Okay, I have access to these anywhere I'm on because I've stored these specific folders on Lightrooms. Cloud documents. So again, I have 100 gigs of storage in Adobe's ecosystem because I'm a member of the Creative Cloud. Okay, and deleted items, so I can get back stuff that's in the trash. I don't have everything in the trash. Let's go to the home button, and of course these buttons were all on the side here. We have this Photoshop button, which just takes us to Photoshop, and then this home button back here will take us back to our welcome screen. Okay, so let's create a new document. Okay, let's just create a document just to have something to work with. This is my create new document window. I'll just zoom in on this a little bit. And as you can see, of course, recent documents I've used, anything saved that I want to go to. If I'm going to work in photo, it gives me various photo paper sizes, as you can see. And a list of templates down here too that I can use. I have print, again, various print sizes, and some templates down here related to print. Art and illustration, okay, more of a pixel-based and poster-based diagrams, paper-like, and templates. And I have web work, various web sizes, and templates. Most of them are free to users. And I have mobile, various iPhone sizes, depending on which iPhone we're working on. You can use all the presets, and I'll show you everything, all the different sizes. Here's some Microsoft stuff, but most of the Microsoft Surface, Android, but you'll see most of it all is Mac related. Here's, I can make icons and various things. Okay, okay. All right, and film and video. So various film and video sizes, and templates for working in film and video. Okay. All right. But we're going to create a document print size. Okay, and I'm going to choose letter, which is 8.5 by 11. And I hope most people realize that. I can create my own size. So over here, I'm going to choose a preset. Okay, but over here on the right-hand side, I could create the exact size I want. Okay. I can choose various units of measurement. These units of measurements will also work with my rulers and my input boxes. Okay. My orientation, if I have multiple artboards. That just lets me have more than one Photoshop document open inside a Photoshop document. Different canvases. The resolution, how many pixels per inch? Okay. And we got per centimeter, but we'll go per inch. And there's really two you need to worry about. If you're going to print the document, it's going to be 300 pixels per inch. If it's going to go to the web, you can see I chose a web preset and it's 72. Okay. Even film and video, 72. Mobile, 72. Art and illustration will be 300 because you're going to be printing, and print and photo will be. A photo dropped down to 118.11. That's interesting. So that's because default. There we go. So their camera sizes. Yeah, 300. So 300 pixels per inch, your resolution if you're going to print it, 72 if it's going to go to the web. If it's going to go to both places, you have to make it at 300 pixels an inch because you cannot go down in file size, in resolution. I mean, you can, it's not recommended and you'll get unsatisfactory results of your image. It'll be pixelated. Okay. All right, so letter. Let's zoom out here and let's open up a letter size document. This is Photoshop's workspace right here. Okay, and what you see is I have a document window right in front of me. That's 8.5 by 11 at 300 pixels an inch. Let's just go through some things. We have our menu bar along the top, and you can see the menu bar, various things, files, edit, image, layer. And everything you want to do in Photoshop, you can access here. There's very other places you can access, but everything is up here. The window shows you all the palettes that we have available in Photoshop, okay? And our help menu is always good. Photoshop help, and you can even dig in and find the manual. If I click Photoshop help, if I click Photoshop help, it'll find the manual and it'll help me dig a little bit deeper. Okay, the next underneath, of course, this I'm on a Macintosh and I have my close window here. The next bar down here is called the options bar. Okay, the option bar is related to each tool. As you can see, I'm switching tools and you can see options change. Okay, so they're specific to each tool. If you want to control the tool, it's in the options bar. Okay. What we have here is a tab. Photoshop has tab windows. Okay, and if I open up a new window, file, new, let's just do a new window and let's just hit enter and you can see I have another tab. Okay, so every window opens up in the same window. It's a default. You can change it if you want, and then you can move from window to window, okay, by clicking on the tabs. Okay, close that one there. You can see we have a close dialog, close on our box, the name of the document, the percentage I'm viewing it, the color space, okay. And this is something we didn't really talk about when I opened up my new document, and I'm going to step back. We're going to talk about color space. RGB is red, green, and blue. Okay, and that's what you look at when you look at your monitor. You're looking at little pixels shining light at you, and they're either red, green, or blue, or various shades and mixtures of red, green, and blue. And if you have all the light shining at you, you get white, and you have no light shining at you, you get black. The bit file is the number, the information in the file. The higher the bit value, the more information. Okay, an RGB file at 8-bit has 256 levels of color. Our color space, our color mode, of course, we have various ones. We have bitmap, which is black and white. Grayscale, which is your various levels of gray. RGB, red, green, and blue. Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black is CMYK. And lab color is another form of color where they use brightness and they separate the color into two values, brightness and intensity and saturation. That's another thing. But you're either using a grayscale, but mostly RGB or CMYK. CMYK is a printing format, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. It's how you get color on a paper. It prints those colors, okay? The colors overlap and you get all the other colors that you can see. RGB, as I said, is red, green, and blue, and it's what your monitor gives you. So even though this is a print document, Photoshop has given me RGB. The reason why it's done that is because RGB is a wider color format and all of Photoshop's filters will work. CMYK, a lot of the filters will not work because it doesn't have a big enough color space to do that. But in saying that, if I'm going to be working in RGB but printing, we always keep an eye on our colors. Okay, I'm going to pick a real bright color right here. And I'm going to get my paintbrush and I'm going to paint. So that's RGB. We have this feature in Photoshop under the View menu. It's called Proof Colors. Okay, and my setup, my proof is going to be working cyan magenta, yellow, and black. Okay, Proof Colors, which is Command Y, and I'll go back here and you'll see when I hit Command Y, the color dims. See that? And then Command Y takes it back. Okay, so you got to know that you can't print this color, and when you go to print cyan, magenta, yellow, black, that's the closest that you're going to get. Okay, there are other ways to figure this out and know this, and I will show you as we go along. Okay, but that's an RGB. Okay, and I'll just show you. Well, we'll just leave it in RGB. Okay, so we have our. I'm going to not save that. Then let's just go back to our plain white page. Okay. So over here on the left side, I have my toolbar. Okay. You can make it by clicking this. You can make it double or depending on the screen space. I'll just go back to this way. This is the move tool. We're going to go back to that in a second. And over on the right hand side, I have my palettes, which we'll get into later. Okay. What we're going to talk about now, excuse me, is the toolbar. We'll go through the toolbar. Okay, so I have a blank piece of paper right here. Let's just talk about what I have first, and then we'll go to the toolbar. Okay, so what I have, this is the most important thing we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about one palette at the moment, and that one palette I'm going to talk about is the layers palette. Okay, this is my sheet of paper right here. Okay, and it says background, and it's locked. Okay, whenever I create a new document, open up a JPEG, it'll come like this. There'll be a background layer, one layer, it'll have one layer, and it'll be locked, it'll be called background. Okay. We can have multiple layers, and we can have transparency. Okay. I could have chose that when I made the document, but I kept the default. And you can see here we have a piece of paper. And I'm going to get, this is my paintbrush. We'll get back to that. I'm just going to paint something on this piece of paper. See that? And you can see the representation over here in my layers palette. Okay. The one thing I want you to know about layers palette right now is we have multiple layers. Okay. And this button here creates new layers. I'll go through these other buttons in a while. But I want to talk about new buttons, new layers, because I can actually work in Photoshop. New color on layers. Okay, these layers interact, the one's on top of the other, so you can't see. This one is locked and it's a background layer, so it can't go anywhere at the moment. I can unlock it and move it around, but by unlocking it, just double clicking on it and it turns to layer 0. Okay, so I just want you to know we have multiple layers. And okay, so I'm going to go to the move tool. It's the first tool on our toolbar, the move tool. And it's how you move things around. You click on them and you move. As you can see, I'll zoom out, I'll click on this purple line, I'll move it around. See that? The move tool. This layer back here is a layer filled with white, and I painted red on it. When I move it out of the way, you see transparency. This is what this gray and white checkerboard is. It's transparency. Okay. When I create a new layer, it becomes transparent. When I create a new document, the original layer is filled with white. Okay. To represent paper. I can have it, I can throw it out, and so we're just dealing with transparency, and you can see that. Okay, by just dragging the layer into the little trash can down the layer's bottom. Okay, so what I did is I dragged it over top of this little trash can. Okay. Okay, so the move tool. So what the move tool can do, let's just, let's add a new layer. I'm going to click the new layer button. I'm going to get a new color. I'm going to my paintbrush. I'm going to paint a new color, and I'll create another layer, and I'll take another color, and I'll paint again. Okay. So let's go to the Move tool. Let's zoom in on the Move tool, and it moves things around. That's what it does. It has options. Okay, my options, put this little button here and a little low with a triangle pointing down. I can create presets for my tools. Okay. The next thing you notice, we have auto select. So you can see here, I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to leave it on for a second. So I got auto select layer. And I'm going to just back out. I'm going to grab my layers palette and move it over here so we can see. So auto select layer, you can see the top layer is the green layer. And if I click on the purple layer, you can see it, it selects that layer. I click on the orange, it selects the layer that that's on. Okay, that's auto select layer. It saves you a lot of time. If you want to move something, you can move it around. You know, because if I click here in the space, I can't move anything because there's nothing available. Click here, I can move that. Now I've got both of them selected. Let's just click away first. There we go. Okay, that's auto select layer. If I turn that off by clicking this little checkbox here, you can see, even though if I click on the purple one, I'm on the green layer, I click on the purple one, I'm still moving the green one, okay? Because I don't have auto select layer. So if I wanted to move the purple one, I would need to select the purple layer and move it around, okay? We also have auto select group, and we'll get into, and I'll explain that when we actually create groups, okay? I'll come back to that again. But auto select layer, sometimes it's really good. It saves you a lot of time. But if you're trying to select something that you can't click on, you can't get close, turning off auto select layer may be easier, okay? Maybe I can't reach that green, but I can move down, I can reach down here, so I can actually, okay? So that's with auto select turned off. I click on the layer, and no matter where I click and move, I move that layer, okay? Auto select layer. What else we have with the Move tool? We have this option which shows transform controls. I'll turn that on just to show you what it does, and it puts this bounding box around your item. I'm going to go up to the green layer, and I'll show it on the green layer. See that? And you know, I can free transform with this. I can spin around, I can do rotate, I can scale up and down, I can distort. Okay? That's what this show transform handles on. I don't have that myself because I just find it annoying. And if I want to free transform, I come up to the edit menu and free transform, which is Command T. Okay. But if you play with your layers and you realize you have the bounding box on, that's because you have show transform controls. Okay. The next thing I have is align tools. So I can align various layers together. This is for aligning layers and objects. So if I select all three of these layers by holding down, I clicked on the top one, hold down the shift key, clicked on the bottom one, and selected all the ones in between. So I have align, I can align them on the left side, center, right, evenly distribute vertically and horizontally. And so, you know, I've got top, middle, bottom, left, right, and center. Okay. And I got an align palette. And my align palette lets me align to selections or to the canvas. Okay. So a selection would be aligning to one of the objects I have selected first. To the canvas would be aligned to, in relation to the canvas. Okay. 3D mode, well, we're not in 3D mode, and well, I don't know if we're going to get to 3D mode. We'll try. You'll try. Okay, that's the Move tool. That is the Move tool. And I spoke a little bit about the layers, that we have multiple layers. You look from the top layer to the bottom layer, okay? And you can see that's why the green one is on top of the orange one, which is on top of the red one, because we're always looking from the top to the bottom. I could easily take my purple one and move it up the stack, no problem. And you can see its stacking order on my page changes also. Okay. And I'm just docking that back. I don't know if you saw that. I'll do that again. I'll just zoom in a little bit here. Let's just take this down like this. And I grab the bar, not the tab. The tab will just move. Well, there's only one in here, but I'm grabbing the bar or the tab if there's only one. And I'm just want it to join this group. And you can see as I put my cursor over the top, get a blue line, and now I have a bunch of palettes grouped together. And they're grouped together because I use them together. Okay, you can see a lot are grouped together, colors and swatches and various things. Okay, let's move on down the toolbar. Okay, the next tool is my rectangular marquee tool. It's for selecting things with a rectangular shape, actually, to be honest with you. And some tools, as you can see, I got my move tool, the artboard tool. Oh, see, I skipped over that. I'll come back to that in a minute. The selection tool, of course, you see some have a little triangle at the bottom. If you click and hold, you will see the other tools in here. So I have a rectangular marquee tool, elliptical marquee tool, and a single row marquee tool. And you see the letter that you push on your keyboard to select this tool, which would be letter M. If you wanted to select the other one, it'd be Shift M would select the other one. You select the one that was used last. And then if you want to select the other one, you just hold Shift M. So M would select one, Shift M would select the other one. Okay. Okay, so let's just use the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to just show you what it does. It makes selections, rectangular selections. And I'm on, and they move them around. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a picture. There it is. So I went to this file. I was working on it the other day with this class, and what I did to find it is I just went to File, Open Recent, and I knew it was in there. Okay, because we were working on it just a few days ago. Okay. Okay, so here I have a picture of a hummingbird. Oops. Okay. And so let's take my selection tool. And as you can see, as I mentioned before, this is just a JPEG. And I opened up the JPEG, and as I said, it opened up with a layer called background, just one layer, and it's locked. Okay. Again, I can unlock it by double-clicking the word background if I want. Okay. And I'm going to make a selection. I'm just going to make a marquee selection, and we'll try to get that hummingbird. Okay. So that's what so now that I have it selected, I can do something with it. Okay. Usually the most thing you want to do is move it. And Photoshop has a nice feature. So the nice feature is when I hold down the command or the control key, no matter what tool I have, as long as I have the control key or the command key held down, it's the move tool. And so I can move things around. Okay. So you can see here I selected the hummingbird. I made a rectangular selection around the hummingbird, held down the command key to turn to the move tool, and I'm moving it around. Okay. It's still selected, so I can still move it around. If I deselected it by going up to the menu, hit select, deselect, it's now there. It's stuck there. If I try to move it, it's there. You see that? It's all dealing with one layer, and now what I've done is I've altered the pixels that were sitting here and there too. Okay. So that was a background layer. Okay, a background layer that has no transparency. And what happens is when I remove the background, I reveal the background layer. Okay, the background color. And if I come to my toolbar, you can see at the bottom of my toolbar we have two color swatches, foreground and background. We have a default, which gives us black as the foreground color, white as the background color, and we have a little triangle, a little arrow that switches. Okay, D on your keyboard gives you default colors, and X switches them. Okay, so just now you see I have black as my default color, and my black as my background color, and you see when I remove my hummingbird, I get filled with the background color. Okay, so that's an opaque file, a background layer. Okay, if I unlock this layer, and you see a dialog box pops up, lets me name it and add color coded in a blending mode. We'll talk about that much later. Okay, so now that I unlocked the layer and I got my marquee selection around my hummingbird, and I remove it by holding down the command key to get to the move tool, I get transparency. And that's what this gray and white checkerboard is in the Adobe world. Whenever you see this gray and white checkerboard, it could be a slightly different gray depending on the person's options, but that's transparency in the Adobe world, okay? And when you see that, you're looking at transparent pixels. Okay, so let's look at the options for our move tool. Okay, what we have here is we have new selection, add to our selection, subtract from our selection, intersect with our selection. What we have here is feathering. The style, I can do a fixed ratio or a fixed size. Okay, and I can select and mask. That's a little bit above us right now. Okay, but this is the option for the toolbar. So I'm going to have it normal, and I'm going to go through these different buttons here. Okay, I'll just show you what they do. Okay, so there's so new. So when I make a new selection, it deletes the old one, and the new one comes. If I choose add to my selection, I can add to my selection. You know, I can keep on making selections, and they'll just keep on staying. And you can see I can add to it. You know, there you go. We have subtract from our selection, and of course subtract. I can subtract from my selection. Pretty straightforward. Intersects, well, that's an interesting one. So if I intersect, what's left would be what's intersected, which is this little part. Okay. So again, we have keyboard commands for that too. So I could just hold down the Shift key to add as I'm drawing, or the Option and Alt key to subtract. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back to normal, and I'm going to show you about feathering. So you can see when I selected my hummingbird, held down the command key to move them away, it's a pretty hard edge. You see that edge there that I made my selection? Okay. Whoops. And what I'm doing, as you can see there, every time I make a selection, I can't do anything except what's on that selection. Okay? I can't work out of here. I can only work here. So it's important when you make a selection, when you're done with it, is to deselect the selection. And up here I have a select menu, and you can see deselect, which is Command D. Okay. Command D, you know, learning these simple keyboard commands like Command D, because you make selections a lot and you want to deselect when you're done with it. And we have a select all, which is Command A. Just like Command A on most applications, select all. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll just show you. I'll get a paintbrush just for a second, and it's a red paintbrush. You can see if I want to paint, I can't paint anywhere else except inside my box. Okay, it can constrain my painting. Okay, so this time, what I want to talk about is feathering. Okay, I'm going to put a feather there, and of course, while I'm here too, I'm going to show you something else. So feathering softens the edge. Okay, it softens the edge of your selection. I can type any amount in there. It's all in relationship to how many pixels I have in my document. So a higher resolution document would need to be feathered more than a low resolution document. And I just want to see when I put my cursor over the word feather, it turns to a finger with a double arrow. That's my scrubbing tool, and I can actually scrub my values. You're going to see that everywhere, well, not everywhere, but a lot of places in Photoshop, in the Adobe world. When a lot of places with dialog boxes, there's a word in front of it, I put my cursor and it lets me scrub it. Okay, so we'll have a 16.2 pixel feather. And this time I'm going to select my hummingbird, hold down the command key and drag them away. And this time you can see the soft edge. So this has been feathered by 16 pixels. Okay. This is a low resolution file. It was just it's just turned into a JPEG. And I took this picture a while ago and I turned it into a JPEG. And that's what feathering does. Okay. Okay, feathering. Let's just take feathering down to 0 again, just by scrubbing it. Okay, so shift drawing draws a perfect square. Okay, from the there we go. Okay, I was going to say option draws it from the center, but it really doesn't anymore. Well, it was when you only have one. Okay. So option will draw from the center and shift will draw a perfect circle from the center. Okay, a perfect square. I'll deselect. And I'll choose the other selection tool by doing Shift M. Whoops. Shift M. Can't be on top of the tool. Now I have the elliptical marquee tool. Okay, and I can make circles. Again, holding down the Shift key makes perfect circles. Holding down Option draws from the center. Let's deselect. There we go. Option. Option draws from the center only when you have the normal selection tool. When you have add to or subtract from, Option does something totally different. And Shift draws a perfect circle, and Option. This is when I'm just making my first selection. Okay. And then the command key, the move tool, and you can move your selection around. When you have things selected, there's other things you could do. So now here's one more trick for drawing a selection. So now I have my selection. I have the elliptical selection tool I'm drawing. I want to try to make a marquee around my hummingbird. So as I'm drawing this, if I hold down the space bar, it lets me move my selection around as I'm drawing it. I can move it around. This is with the space bar down. Okay. When the space bar is up and I move my mouse, I'm resizing the circle. But if I hold the space bar, I can move my selection around. Okay. All right. So I'd make a selection for various reasons, and we'll talk about those in a second because we got quite a few selection tools to go over with. Okay. These first selection tool on my toolbar is the normal, rectangular, elliptical, single row marquee and column or row. Yeah, I don't think I've used those maybe once in my entire career, but that's what they do. The next tool down the line, which is L on my keyboard, is the lasso tool. The lasso tool is a free-form drawing tool. Okay, I just click with my mouse and draw. Okay, we have another one down. We have a polygon lasso tool. And the polyline creates straight line edges. Okay, and the magnetic lasso tool makes a selection by snapping. It snaps to the edge of pixels. Okay. We have much better tools in Photoshop now to do these tricks than this one. So I'll show you all three of them. The lasso tool, free-form drawing tool. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a bit and just draw that. And there it is, free-form drawing tool. Of course, the same thing. I can add to the selection by holding down the Shift key. I can subtract from selection by holding down the Option key. Lasso tool. Okay. And we'll deselect that with Command D. I'm going to hit Shift L, which is going to choose the next lasso tool, which is the polygon lasso tool. And that's clicking straight lines. If I click there and I click here and over there and double click, it goes to the end. And this one's for creating straight line selections. Okay. And where you click, you just drag your mouse, click again, click again, click again. If you double click, it goes back to where you started. Okay, and the next tool, I'll hold Shift L to get me my next tool. I can always go to the toolbar and select it myself. And this is the magnetic lasso tool. And let's see. And you see right there, let's zoom in. You see, we got a hot spot on this tool. You see the very tip of that black arrow? That's the hot spot. And if I click on here and I drag along, it should snap to the edge of my, and I'm just going to click because I'm changing directions. Lift up my mouse, click again. And so this magnetic tool, whoops, I should click there to tell them I'm changing direction. And it's whoops. Click again. And you can see how it's kind of just snapping. You know, this used to be a real nice tool, but they have so many more advanced tools now for making selections. And of course, when I go right back to where I started, you see that little zero, that little circle pop up? That tells me I'm closing my path. And I click, and now I have a selection. Not bad. Not bad selection. Missed this little part up here, but not bad. And that's the magnetic lasso. Okay. The one I use most time, of course, that one for drawing straight lines is great for if you're selecting buildings or something. But the freeform lasso one we use quite a bit. Okay. And again, they have the same options: normal, add to, subtract from, exclude, feathering, and anti-alias. Anti-alias is, what anti-alias is, it's how you make round circles from, I'll show you what it is. Let's create a new layer. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to get my marquee tool, and it has a feather of 0. So it's going to be sharp edge. I'm just going to make a perfect circle. And I'm going to, so it's just a selection. It's nothing yet. I got a new layer that I made, and I want to fill it with a color. So I'm going to go to the Edit menu, Fill, and with my little dialog box, I can fill with whatever I want. Patterns, colors, foreground color, background color. I'll just pick this pink here. There we go. It didn't work. Did I not do Edit, Fill? Edit, Fill, did I close it and not fill? Oh, So look at that, I was my own worst enemy. So I did it right. Color, I picked the color, it was pinky color. Blending mode we'll talk about. Normal, we'll learn a lot about blending mode. It's very popular, very important part of Photoshop. Opacity, but you still got this option, preserve transparency. So the thing is, fill is transparent, and so if I preserve transparency, we're not going to fill anything because it's going to preserve transparency. So I'm going to just deselect there and I click OK. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to deselect and I'm going to zoom in on this circle. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm zooming in on my screen, and you can kind of see how good it looks. I'm going to zoom in on Photoshop, which is Command+. And this is anti-alias right here. I'm going to zoom right in. So this, everything in the computer world is made up of square pixels. Okay, you can see the pixels. I'm zoomed in so much you can see each individual pixel. So this, again, my pink circle is sitting against that green gray background, and as I zoom in on the corner and I'm looking right at individual pixels, you can see the colors. And what you notice is that on the edge is that my pink circle, the edge pixels are part of, they take either part of the pink or part of the background color. You see that? That's anti-alias, okay? And that it confuses, well, it didn't confuse it. It makes the eye think that we're looking at curves when we're looking at a bunch of square pixels, okay? And that's how you get round edges. Computer graphics, it's called anti-alias. Okay. Without anti-alias, and let's do that one more time, and let's just deselect anti-alias. There we go. Let's take another circle. Let's go edit, fill, and we'll just use the same thing. And I'm going to deselect this one, Command D, and we'll zoom in on this one. So this one is the anti-alias one, and that one isn't. See that? So you can see the jagged edges. See that? So there is no blending. And you come over here to this one here. Whoa. And you can see anti-alias. See that? That's what anti-alias is. Okay. So I'm moving a little bit closer together just so you can see the difference between anti-alias and no anti-alias. Okay. And you see these little jagged edges. There used to be a problem on the web all the time with that, but that's anti-alias. There we go. I think I did a good job explaining anti-alias. Okay. Let's zoom out. Zoom out. Command 0 fits the window. Control 0 fits the window. Command 1 is 100%. Command 0 fit the window. Command plus, zoom in. Command minus, zoom out. Okay, let's move on down the toolbar. Okay, we talked about our selection tools. One more selection tool. 3 more actually. Object selection tool, quick selection tool, or magic wand. Okay, so we'll start with the magic wand. And I'm going to zoom out. And the magic wand is a tool, looks like a firecracker. And what it is, when you click on it, it selects that color, and every color that's the same, that's touching it. Okay? That's why I didn't select this color, because they're not touching. Okay? I picked this green out here, and it selects, whoops, let's deselect, sorry. And, so that, I selected a lot of the green. See that? I selected all, well, that's because transparent, sorry. I apologize, I clicked on the transparent. So I'm going to move down. So things are layer specific, okay? These 2 pink circles are on this layer, okay? I want to select something down on the hummingbird layer, so I'm going to select that layer. And with my magic wand, you can see if I click here, well, let's actually do this yellow flower. It may work a little bit easier. Okay. And you can see how much of that file, see that? I've selected all the yellow, okay? If I click over here on this red, you can see I select not all the red, but a lot of the red. And let's talk about that right now. So I'm going to back out here. I'm going to go up to my options bar for this tool. My magic wand, again, the same. Add to, normal, add to, subtract, exclude. Sample size. So am I going to sample the pixel I'm clicking on, or a 5x5 average, or up to 101, or just the actual pixel I'm clicking on? And you can see, well, you can see the greens, how many different pixels there are. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is tolerance. See, we got anti-alias with this tool. Contiguous means the pixels that are touching. Okay. So it's going to select every pixel that I click on that falls within a tolerance of 50. Okay, and let's talk about tolerance. And we'll talk about these other, talk about tolerance, okay? We know what anti-alias is. Contiguous is pixels touching. Tolerance is, what is tolerance? Tolerance is, okay, let's explain this. Here's my colored button, my color tab, okay? And what we have here are our 3 colors, okay? All 3 colors pushed up to the highest level gives us white. See that? I bring these down, and you can see I'm getting various colors, and you can see my color bars are kind of changing, and these are different values. But if I take all my colors down to 0, you can see I get black. If red's at 100, anything else is a black, I get red, and then you can see. So this is why our colors are broken down into 256 different layouts. That's an 8-bit file, okay? A 16-bit file would have a lot more variations, but most of the time we work in 8-bit in Photoshop, and that's what it means. That 256 levels relate to all the different intensities of the color, and every color has a value from 0, which gives you black or no color, up to 255, which gives you all the color. And when you get all the red, you get really bright red. Okay. And see what we got here? This little swatch here, a color stop, and we got an exclamation mark. Okay. What that's telling me is they know I'm creating a print document, and they're telling me that this color that I've selected, this really bright red, will not print. And if I want a red that's going to print, I would click here, and it would choose that red. That's the brightest red it could choose. And it's a variation between red, green, and blue. See that? Okay, so that's why we have 256 or 250. Well, 256, which goes from 0 to 255. I'm on my Hummingbird. Let's go up to my tolerance. Let's give a tolerance of 10. Let's try to select this red here. Well, let's do the yellow. And you can see with a tolerance of 10, it only selected that pixel. Let's go up to my options and do I have point size? That's not what I want. I want a 5x5 average. Okay, so it's going to give a 5x5 average by where I clicked, and you can see it selected more. I usually have it at 3x3 or 5x5 most of the times, because I don't want to usually select that one pixel. I want a variation. And when you're working in RGB, which is a raster program, continuous tone, you can see all the various different colors of green. I have my background and red. So that's with a tolerance of 10. Let's go up here. Let's change the tolerance to 50. Let's zoom back in on this part, and let's click with 50. And you can see what 50 did. Look at that. Selected almost all of it. And of course, I can hold down the Shift key and select the rest that I didn't get. There you go. Click, there you go. The Magic Wand. Great selection tool. The other selection tool we have here in this board is the Quick Selection tool. Okay, this tool lets you paint and select as you go. I'm going to try to select our Hummingbird. This is what they call a smart tool, and I'm going to tell it that I want to select the Hummingbird. And how I do that is just paint on the Hummingbird. I don't paint too close to the edge, because what it's going to do is going to think I may want to select the edge. So I stay relatively a nice distance away from the edge. I click, and it finds the edge for me. You know, it's a learning tool. So as I go along, it's going to learn. Okay. So here underneath the wing, it thinks I want to select that. So if I hold down the Alt key, I don't know if you can see there's a little plus sign in the middle of this tool with the Alt or Option key held down. It's a subtraction tool. So I'm going to subtract from my selection. So I'm just going to click up here a little bit, and you'll see it'll start snapping to that color there. There we go. Beautiful. Then over here, the same thing. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just brush on that, and it snaps right to the. And of course, I have to go back again. I have to teach it. Learns. And you see it missed this up here because as I paint. There we go. Oh, and it missed a little bit down here. And a little bit of the wing. Of course, I can make my brush really small. And how I'm making my brush small is by, there's two brackets by the P key. The one on the right makes the brush bigger. The one on the left makes the brush smaller. So the bracket keys on to the right of the P key on your keyboard. And that's how you can change your brush size without actually going to the palette. All right, so I'm just telling Photoshop what I want selected and what I don't want selected. Okay. And then now I've got the hummingbird selected. I can actually move them around. I can cut them out. Look, I still had the flower selected too. Okay. So there's various reasons why you want things selected. You can add filters to them. You can do all kinds of things. I can give a filter that would blur it, so I can actually blur my hummingbird and only the hummingbird just because I have him selected. See that? And the fly and the flower, that is. So that's the reason why. And of course you may want to copy and put him on his own layer. So now that he's selected, I could do various things. I could go up to my layer menu, create a new layer via copy. And I could copy my selection and put it on a new layer, or I could cut it out and put it on a new layer. And you notice we have keyboard commands, Command J, Command Shift J. And so since he's selected, and I can go up to layer, I'll go layer, new, via copy. And you can see from my layers palette that it took my selection and copied it on its own layer. And there's my hummingbird there on the layer all by himself. I could just show you that. See that? Oh, and the flower. So I forgot the flower too. Okay, I'm just going to throw that layer in the trash. I don't need it anymore. We have one more selection tool I want to show you, and that is Select Object tool. Okay. This is, I'm going to turn off the visit. Well, let's show you what I'm going to do. So here's my layers palette. There's the hummingbird layers, the two pink circles. That is the visibility. So if I turn that off, the layer is invisible. It's still there, but you can't see it. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to turn the visibility, go down to this layer, and I'm going to take my Select Subject tool, and if I draw a selection around the hummingbird, release the mouse, look at that. Look at that. Hey? It selected the hummingbird. Not bad, missed a little bit. I can fix that up by, I can fix my selection up by going to one of the selection tools, and whether it was the quick mask mode or the magic wand tool, I can do that. Okay, so this is a brand new tool, Select Subject tool. It also shows up here with the other tools. Even without this tool, it shows up in this one. Okay, I would click this if I only had one subject. If I had more than one subject, I would use this tool to select it. Okay, there's one more selection tool I want to talk about, and that one is here at the bottom of my keyboard right there. See that? It's called Quick Mask Mode. Enter Quick Mask Mode. And you see it's got Q. Quick Mask Mode, and in parentheses it's got Q, meaning that's the keyboard to select that. Let's just zoom in on my bird here a little bit. I have him selected almost. I didn't get his beak and I didn't get part of his head. And so I need to fix that right now. So if I hit Q or select that button, what it does, it turns my selection into pixels, kind of like, okay? And it gives it a color, a ruby, like a ruby lift color well, it resembles old screen printing from days in past where we used to cut our designs in screens. And I'm over here on the tool. I just want to talk about one thing first before I go any farther. And a lot of tools in the Adobe world, if I double click on the tool, that's the tool there. If I double click on it, it brings up the tools options, okay? And I could change the color if I didn't like the red color. If my whole document was red, the red wouldn't help me that much. I can change the opacity, whether it's selected or the masked area, what the color indicates. I want to indicate the selected area. Okay. So there it is. I hit Q again, and there it is. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to take my paintbrush over here. We haven't really got to the paintbrush yet. We're going to start early, and I'll come back to that. But my paintbrush is a big brush, okay? I can make it smaller by using my two bracket keys. And it's like masking. We'll talk about masking, but what happens when I paint with black, it gives me the rubylith. You see that? I'm painting there now. And I have a nice hard edge brush, and we're going to learn more about brushes, but I just wanted to show you this selection tool. Okay, I make my brush smaller, and I can get in here and do the beak. So I'm making a selection, but I'm actually painting the selection. When I started first using Photoshop, I found this way, the quick mask mode, and we missed some of his claws here, was my favorite way of making selections. And it's a good way. You can use your paintbrush if you're not as apt on some of the other tools that let you get the paintbrush. Now when I hit Q again, you can see my selection now covers over where I paint. Quick mask mode. Okay, it's a selection tool. It's the bottom of your keyboard, and you can use your paintbrush as a selection tool. Okay. So, and we saw the quick selection tool, or the select subject tool. Very interesting. Okay, as I said before, that tool is also here. If I take any one of these selection tools, it's up here in the key, up in the option bar, and I can click select subject. Since I only have one subject on there, select, but it didn't do as good as the other one as me just selecting this, because it thought, since my hummingbird's beak was touched to the feeder, it thought the feeder bottom here was part of the subject. Okay, when I made the selection that avoided the rest of the hummingbird, the rest of the feeder, it was a little bit better at selecting my subject. Okay. Okay, so we're going down the toolbar. There's another, our next tool is the crop tool. Okay. And the crop tool crops things out, right? You can show your thirds. You can move your image around in the crop dialog box. You can rotate the image in the crop dialog box. Cropping, and if I hit OK, so you notice that this tool, like some tools, like the crop tool or text tool, has a little selection. You either like what you did or you don't like what you did. Of course, that would cancel the crop. That would select the crop. Enter on your keyboard would do the same thing. So if I click there, you can see there's my crop. We have an option to delete crop pixels. So when I undo my crop or go to my crop again, I can't get it back. They're gone. They're gone. I usually don't have that feature on there, because usually what I do, well, it all depends. Sometimes, in case you make a mistake, you may not want that. So if I unselect that, well, let's undo what we did first. Let's go back to the full picture. Let's take the crop tool. Let's unselect, delete crop pixels. Hit there, hit enter, and you can see it looks the same, but when I click with the crop tool again, it's all there still, okay? In case I make a mistake and I want to come back. So that's delete crop pixels. Sometimes you may not want to delete your crop pixels. Okay, this shows me grids. I got the rule of thirds. I can have different kind of grids. These are photography grids for content, for spacing out things. And we have some options. Use classic mode, show cropped area, auto center preview, some various options. And usually when you see, of course, the little chain or the gear here, you know this is mostly settings for whatever tool it is. Okay. And the escape key, well, and Command Z will get you out of there. So under the crop tool, we have other tools. Okay. Other tools, and they're the perspective tool, so I can actually work in a perspective. I can do a perspective crop. I can do that out there. I will show you that. But I really want to talk about the slice and the slice select tool. These two tools are only for web design. Okay, they don't really slice your document up. It's for web design, and that way if I slice this document out, what I've created is a user-defined slice, so I can actually choose compression settings for different slices. I can actually make this one a hotspot, so I click on the Hummingbird, it takes me to a Hummingbird site. But it's specifically for websites. So when I convert this to a JPEG for the web, it will slice it up in pieces and write the code to put it all back when I load it on a web page. Okay. But these are strictly for web design, the slice tools and the slice select tool. Okay, we have another tool. This is the framing tool. I can turn something into a frame if I wanted to. I could make a frame and throw something into it. The frame tool. So I can draw a frame here, and there it is there. I can move it around. And let's take a picture. Let's open up a picture and drop it in that frame. So let's just, I made a frame, and let's just take a picture from my desktop. Okay, it'll take this one. And if I actually take this picture, let's just take part of it. I'm going to take a marquee of it. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to copy that. Command C to copy, go to the other document, Command V. So if I select the frame, I should be able to paste right into there. See that? So I paste it right into the frame. And I can show my whole document there, but I can just control what's in the frame. Okay. Many ways of doing this very same thing. And this is interesting. See how it turned that circle into a frame. Okay. The next tool is the eyedropper tool. The eyedropper tool lets you select color from your image. So I click on the pink, it's selected. If I click on the red over here, it's selected. My hummingbird color. The green back here. There's always times, especially in photography, where you want to use part of the image color for something, whether it's text or painting or whatever, you know. And we have an eyedropper tool for that, which is I on your keyboard. When I have my paintbrush tool selected and I'm painting, I can hold down the eyedropper tool, select a color from my screen, and then start painting with that color. And you'll notice when I click with the eyedropper tool, the color on the bottom is the current color, and the color on the top of the circle is going to be my new color. Okay. The eyedropper tool. The eyedropper tool also comes with other tools under there. Let's just zoom in on that again. So the eyedropper tool comes with other tools underneath. Now, of course, every one that has a little triangle by the corner, when you click on it, it holds other tools. We have a 3D eyedropper tool. I can copy. We're not working in 3D, but I can copy the material from that. We have a color sampler tool, and it lets me click multiple colors, and it'll give me in my info dialog box the RGB value for the color. So if I click here, what I need to do is go Window, View Info, bring my info palette around. You can see when I click, it gives me the color value for that one. Okay. Okay. So there, that one. We also have a measurement tool, which again, this uses the the info palette so I can actually draw and I can measure how long my hummingbird is, what angle my path line is, and how long it is. We have a note tool, which lets me, if I click somewhere, you can see a little dialog box pops up over here. That lets me add a note that will travel with the document. Okay, it won't print or anything like that. It's just a little note you can, send along with other people. Okay. And we have like a count tool where you can just put numbers, so I can put like a number next to things. And then I can make a note that number 1 means this, number 2 means that, and various things. And these last couple tools are for communicating in a big workspace. Okay. So you can see I've been going around doing all kinds of stuff. My file's getting pretty messy looking there. So we have a thing, I can go undo. I can undo and undo. We've got the edit menu up here. Edit, undo, brush, redo. Control, Command Z, Shift, Command Z for the redo. We also have file, which is revert, which will revert to exactly how I opened it up. So if I want to go back to how I opened it up, I can choose revert. We also have something interesting regarding undos, and that's called my history palette. I'm just going to back up. My history palette shows me a list of all the last things I've done. Okay, and I can go back. It's linear, so if I jump back here, I've lost everything in between. Okay, so it's a linear history development. Okay, and I can go back one or forward one step at a time. See that? And it loads as much as you have in RAM. Older versions it was 20. This one actually definitely has more than 20. It looks like there's got to be 50. And of course that's done with my preferences, and I can change that. Okay, it's called step backward and step forward, the history palette. And also you'll notice the history palette, let's just zoom here. When I open up the history palette, this first icon has the document how I opened it up. So no matter what I do to it, even if I save it, as long as I haven't closed the document, I can click that layer right there and go back to how I opened up the document. Okay. So that's there. No matter what I've done, as long as I haven't closed the file, I can go to the history palette, go to the very top, and click on how I opened up the file. And history palette does some other things, and we'll talk about that another day. I can take snapshots in history and all that. But that, in essence, it's an undo. It's for undoing. It does multiple undos. We're going to go down. The next group of tools are photo retouching tools or healing tools. We have the spot healing tool. We have the healing brush, the patch tool, the content aware move tool, and the red eye tool. Okay, let's start with the spot healing brush. So the spot healing brush, well, I'll explain. Here's a good example. I have a picture of a plane in the sky, and the healing brush is for removing unwanted items. And what it does, it actually, healing, what it does, watch, I'll see you'll remove the plane, but what it does is it replaces it with images from the surrounding pixels. So it blends in perfectly. Healing, so you really can't even tell it was there in the first place. Okay. I have a photo of a model, and you can see she has a couple blemishes in her head. And so I could use the spot healing brush to remove these. And what I would do is I'd make my brush using the brackets keys. Again, like all brushes, I could come up to the options bar, click on it, change its size, the softness, the spacing, and we'll talk about spacing later, and the shape of the brush. Okay, I'll talk about more about brushes when I get to the brush palette. And these are the options. You know, it's content aware. I can create texture. I can do like a proximity match so it matches the pixels. But I'm doing a content aware, and I want it to be aware of the content around it. So when it replaces it, you can see. And you can see if I come right over here, you can see that little blemish there. I'm going to make my brush just a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to brush over that, and you can see it's gone. All right, here's another one here. Just click on it, brush. And of course I have a really soft edge brush, and it heals is what it does. It samples the surrounding pixels and heals. And so as a photo retoucher, you spend a lot of time doing this. Just going over each one. That one didn't look as good. There we go. I don't want to heal the water droplets, and so this is usually what you do. You just travel around the document and heal. This one here, this little mole on her lip, might be a little bit more difficult to heal. Let's see what happens. Now you see what, because it does, it brings in part of the, and it didn't really look the same. And so this is where, instead of using the spot healing brush, we would be using the healing brush. And there we go. Okay, so let's move on to the next brush. And the next brush is the healing brush. Okay, the healing brush, again, is a brush, uses different brushes. You can sample, is what we're going to do, or you can clone with a pattern. Okay, the align means when I click one spot and I sample this spot here and I start painting, you can see how where I'm painting now and is where I'm sampling from the area, and it's aligned. You can see it moves with it. Okay, without the align, what I end up doing when I sample my texture, I end up painting the same texture all the time. So every time I go back to the beginning, it starts there. Okay. All right, so how the healing brush works, let's just zoom out a little bit. What I'm looking for is texture. So what I want to do is I want to hold down the Alt Option key and sample. You see the skin is kind of smooth around here. Let's just zoom in a little bit on this. Sorry. And you can see this. So I'm sampling this smooth skin here and painting over here. So if I Option click, and then I can just paint with the smooth skin. See that? And you can see how the texture changes. This one here, I don't know about it. Let's try the beauty mark. Let's see. Yeah, so I went too far and I sampled over again. So I'll just click here, and there you go. See that? Gone, disappeared. The healing brush. And this one here, let's see if I can just sample up here and heal. But what happens when you heal with the healing brush, it takes all the surrounding pixels and tries to heal from that. And you can see this little mole is right next to her red lipstick, so it tried to heal part of her red lipstick. Okay, this is where my selection tool would come in. So I would take my magic wand, I would feather it. Well, no, I don't think I would feather. I'm going to take the feather down because I want to make sure it does not get that. I want to separate the mole from the red lipstick. So I'm going to just draw a line here. And if I feathered it, it would be as soft as, so it would defeat the purpose. So I'm going to just get a little bit larger area so I can get an area to sample. I'll get my healing brush, which is J on your keyboard. You can see the brush name and the letter used to bring up that brush. Okay. And again, they're all J, so you'd get one tool, Shift J would bring up the next one, and Shift J would bring up the next one. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller using those two brackets right next to the P key. And Option click to sample some nice smooth texture skin. And you see, especially when you do with skin, it has a grain. You can see the grain goes in certain spots. The grain on her cheek doesn't match the grain below her lip. And the grain on the left side of her cheek does not match the grain on the right side of the cheek. So you always have to sample close to where you want to heal so the grain matches, because that's really what you're doing. And look at that, you can't even tell. And it's gone. The healing brush. And we have another one. Let's see, let's move on down. And the next one down is the patch tool. The patch tool would be where I'd be doing a bigger area. You know, I don't know. Let's see, let's just try to, I'll just draw a patch around this skin here, and I try to replace it with some smooth skin. I'm not really worried about the color because it should heal in after I'm done. So if I do there and replace, not bad, not bad, not bad. You know, as a photo retoucher, I can show you a much more advanced way, but it takes a lot more work. But you know, these tools work as a great starting point for your photo retouching, and the end point too, depending on how advanced you want to get, and whether you're just removing a few pimples or working on a model shot. Okay, well, the other two tools under the healing brush, we'll zoom in on that, are the red eye tool and the content aware move tool. Okay, let's do the red eye tool since I have a red eye file right here in front of us. So you can see with the red eye tool, if I just take the tool and I make a selection of the whole eye, not just the red part of it, and you can see how it turns all the red pixels dark and black, and it keeps the color in the highlights and the shadows of the eye and the reflection in the eye are still there. Pretty simple tool. There we go. The next tool is the content aware move tool. Okay, and I'm going to just I'll just select this sheep sitting here. I'll try to get it close to him as possible. Of course, I could always zoom in and do this. And I could take them and move them over here. Click enter. Not a bad job. Not a bad job. That is the content aware move tool. We have a tool called the cloning tool. And I could take the cloning tool. Let's make a new layer just so in case I make a mistake. And I could option click on my sheep and move her right over here, and then just paint her in there. Okay. Then I could get the brush just a little bit smaller. Option click on some grass and paint this one. Whoops, I got a little bit too close to the other one. Let's just, there we go. And that does a much better job. You can't even tell. Okay. I just wanted to show you that while I was here. Let's continue on with the tools. On the toolbar is the brush tool. Very important tool. The brush tool, the pencil tool, color replacement tool, and the mixer brush. Okay. And we're going to talk about the brush tool, and we'll come up to the options for the brush tool. Of course, this is my presets for the brush tool. What my brush will look like, the size of my brush, the hardness of my brush. We have a huge brush palette with all kinds of brushes. We also have brush settings, which we'll go into a little bit later. Blending modes, which we'll go into later. The opacity of my brush. I can turn my brush, use pressure sensitive to control the opacity. I can turn it into an airbrush. I can smooth out the edges, and I can paint on an angle. Connect my tablet, and this gets a little, I can actually paint symmetry, paint with, and I can set the symmetry of my painting. And we have various brush palette with various sizes of brushes, all types of brushes. Soft brushes, hard edge brushes, all kinds of wet media brushes, dry media brushes, special effect brushes, general brushes, all kinds. And you can download brushes. I've downloaded this one I like, and it's called a bubble brush. You can see it paints just like a bubble. It's pretty big there. Let me just bring its size down a bit. a bubble brush. And there's all kinds of brushes. We have brush palette. You can turn anything you want into a paintbrush. I could take this picture of this girl. I could take my rectangular marquee tool with a feather of 0, make a selection of this person's eye, go to the edit menu and define brush preset. I could give it a name, and I could deselect so I can print, and I can paint with that eye. See that? Anything could be a brush. Oops. Okay, brush. We have various brush palettes. We over here we have a brush, our brushes. Okay, you can see all the new ones I created at the bottom. Cancel. We got brushes that look like little highlights. All kinds of brushes. Okay. And how brushes work and how it works in Photoshop, you know, you can, right, we have brush settings. So each brush has its own settings. Okay. So we'll just talk about that for a second. Let me go to brush tip size. Let's just pick a normal brush just to, it's a nice round edge brown brush. Okay. I'll just undo a few times to get rid of all the stuff I've been doing so far. Again, I could go with my history palette if I want to, but I'm just going to hit Command Z a few times. Make my brush a little bit bigger. And what we have is the size of the brush, the hardness of the brush. I can, as I said, we noticed before, a hard edge brush and a soft edge brush. I can change the shape of my brush. And as you see at the bottom of my brush palette here, you can see it shows me example what the brush is going to look like. Okay, I can change its angle, how I paint with it, what it looks like. Okay, so let's just go back to that brush. Let's give it a hardness of 50. The next thing I want to talk about is spacing. Well, let's actually keep it hard. So spacing, so you don't really actually move paint around in Photoshop when you're painting. What you do is you click, and I'm painting with white, and I drop white down. And as I paint, how it works is that every time it moves 25% of the space, the size of my brush, it drops down another brush. This relates down to spacing. This is how the painting works. Okay, I can increase the spacing, and you can see I can increase it so much so that I can leave a space in between my printing. Okay. So at 150, so every time I move 150% of the brush size, it drops down another brush. Okay. But you see, if I work at, the default is 25. And it works pretty good. I can take it down even lower than that, down to 10, 9, to make it even smoother. Okay. Okay, you can see the difference between painting at that and then at 25. So this is what it is. The default is 25. There we go. And that's how painting works in Photoshop. Okay. But besides that, we also have new presets, controls for my painting. Now let's try to show you that right now. We have shape dynamics. So let's just back off. Let's just see that. So I can change the shape of my brush as I go. Let's close my character palette here. And it's jitter, so you can see, so I'm going to jitter the size of my brush. You can see my brush is really small, and it gets, see that? Getting various sizes. Okay, I can do the minimum diameter, the maximum diameter, so you can see that? So I'm jittering the size. I can jitter the angle of my brush. This is a round brush, so it doesn't have that much of an angle. Okay. And the brush roundness. So we'll bring that up, we'll jitter that quite a bit. Let's just undo all these settings and you can see that. Shape dynamics. So I'm controlling the shape as I'm moving along. Okay. I'm going to turn that off. Another one I have that I like is scattering. And let me just back out here a second and bring this up a little bit higher. There we go. Scatter, I can scatter the brush. So I'm brushing just like this. And then this area down here gives me an example of. So I'm going to put scattering. You can see I can scatter my brush as I go. I'm going to do both axes. So it goes on that. I can do the count, how many it does. I'll keep it low, and I can do a count jitter. Okay. And as I paint, you can see I'm scattering brushes all over the place. Okay. My scatter brush. And if I was painting with a brush that looked like a leaf, you know, I could scatter leaves or balloons or whatever I have all over the place. Okay. Because anything I select can be a brush. Okay, so I could select a picture of a balloon, and then I could scatter the balloon all over the place. Another thing I like to do with when I scatter brushes for my backgrounds, and that is we have color dynamics. And I'll just pick two colors. I'm going to pick red and then green for my foreground background color. And I can jitter, like scatter foreground background color. So you can see, well, that's a hue shift, so I'm giving all the colors. Let's undo that. Let's take the hue jitter down and saturation jitter. And brightness, we'll just do foreground background. And my foreground color is green. I'll back out to show you that. I mean, it's red, my background is green. And so as I paint, I'll be scattering red and green. Okay. I can do a hue jitter. I can turn off the foreground. I'll have to leave it on. A hue jitter, and it'll give me all the jitter, all the colors in the rainbow. You see that? Okay. My scatter brush with color dynamics. We can do saturation and the brightness of the color, and this is just changing. Some are saturated, some are brighter than others. The scatter brush. We have brushes that you can add an extra texture to as you're painting. You can't really see that with my scatter brush. I'll turn that off. We can paint with two brushes, so two different shapes at the same time. It gets kind of confusing. But I've got the scatter, my shape dynamics. I got my round brush, my circular brush, plus my round brush going together at the same time. Not too sure why you'd want to do that. That's to create nice shapes. Let's just take my shape, take our spacing off. Let's get rid of all that stuff. What's that look like? All right. Let's take our spacing back to 25. Okay, we got color dynamics, dual two brushes at a time, texture brushes. A transfer brush lets me use opacity. Okay, so I can jitter the opacity. And if you notice before, and also when I did my scattering, we had the control. I turned it off because I just have a trackpad. But if I had a tablet, I could actually use my pen pressure. You know, if I had a Wacom tablet or a pen tilt, a stylus wheel, okay, or the rotation of my brush. What fade does is that the brush fades away after a while. See how my scattering is fading away? So it just scatters for a while and it's gone. All right. And noise, I can add noise to my brush. Film noise, I can do wet edges, which kind of make it resemble watercolors. And the edges get darker. Build up is, build up effect. Again, if I, want to, as I hold I got the scatter brush on, I'll turn that off. And sorry, I'll go back to build up. And so as the longer I hold my brush there, the more paint comes out. Okay. And protect texture is, so if I'm painting over something that has a nice texture, like this head, It's protecting the texture underneath. My brush should have more blending modes to it so I can see more, but or lower the opacity. Okay. You soften it up. There we go. Okay, and I can still see the texture underneath. But anyways, that's the brush palette. The brush settings. I'm going to turn everything off because, again, it's always important if you leave all these settings like this and you come back and try to use another brush and it scatters all over the place or it doesn't work the way it should be, come to your brush settings and make sure you don't have something turned on that you don't want turned on. So with everything turned off, I just got a normal brush, normal soft edge brush, painting with my foreground color, which is red. And all these settings, a lot of tools use brushes. My cloning tools, my eraser tools, a lot of my tools use the brush. And any tool that uses a brush as its tool have all these different features and effects that we can use. Okay. And my dodge, my burn, my cloning tools all have the same brush features. Okay. Okay, so the next tool in the brush toolbar I want to show you is the pencil. Well, the pencil tool is just a pencil. Doesn't have much options. Look up the option bar. It's still got just the different tools. This is my brush presets up here, so I can toggle the brush settings open from right up here. Okay, these are the brush tips, and those are the brush settings that I was just looking at right there. Okay, and opacity, smoothing. I got that's about it. Pressure sensitive for opacity if I had a tablet. Then we have a color replacement tool. This is an interesting tool. Let's just back out and I'm going to show you the color replacement tool by finding it. Here we got a photo of a guy in a yellow t-shirt. So I can take a different color. Like I have red as my foreground color. I'm going to get just a small brush, and if I click on there, I can tone it red. It doesn't actually go as bright red because it uses what they call a color overlay effect. So, and I can paint and change the color of the shirt. See, I can go over the edge there and I don't paint the white. See that? Or when I go over his hand, I don't paint the hand. There we go. So I don't have to stay in the borders, as they say. But you can see that it leaves a little red, yellow halo around there, and that's kind of hard to get. See, when I try to get rid of that, then I start selecting his skin. So that's a little tricky. I want to show you this tool, which is the Clone Stamp tool. The Clone Stamp tool lets me clone the image. So what you do is you set your brush size, whether you got a soft edge brush or a hard edge brush. You hit the Option key and you click the part you want to clone, and then you start painting what you've cloned. And I don't know if you can see, but you can see a little X going around the eye where I cloned, and I'm cloning. You can see that I can do her nose and her other eye. Clone tool. Okay. The options for the clone tool, the ones that, the same brush palette, normal opacity, flow, angle. We got a line, and I'll show you what a line means. And so when I actually do an option, click and paint here, and then start painting, and then I come over down here, I should be painting her mouth. So you see how the X is moving, it's staying aligned to where the first place I clicked. If I come over here, then I'm going to paint her shoulder. If I deselect the line, let's just undo what I just did. And when I clone her eye, and I'm painting over here, and I'm done. But then the next time I come over here, I'll be painting her eye again. So it redoes it. Where the other time, it always remembered where I originally clicked and kept everything aligned. So this one, that lets me. The cloning tool. We also have the clone pattern tool. Okay, and I can pick a pattern. We have all kinds of patterns. Just to speed this up, we've got trees, grass, water. Let's look at water. There we go, and I'm cloning water. I'll turn her face into a pool. Okay. And these patterns are seamless patterns, so you can see. Oh, you can't see where the pattern goes to the next one. See that? The cloning pattern. Pattern stamp tool. Okay. And you can see it's faded on this because I have a soft edge brush. If I came over here, made it a hard edge brush, you can see the difference between my two stamps. Okay. The clone stamp tool and the pattern stamp tool. Okay. Remember the clone stamp tool, whatever you click on, becomes a pattern, and you can paint over it. Okay. The next tool is the history brush and the art history brush. Again, these are kind of interesting tools. Well, let me show you how they work. So if let's just go to the, okay, I know what we'll do. So here's my history. So what I've done here, you can see I've cloned her eye, and I blurred here. So I'm just jumping around in history. So I've been working on this file earlier, and I blurred it. So I'm going to step back in time before I blurred it, but I'm going to click here. Let's see. I'll just show you. So I deleted a layer. That was the text layer I had. I was cloning around with the clone tool, and then I blurred it. Okay. Here, I'll do it again. I'll just show you what I'm doing. Okay. So the clone tool, I don't want to do that. I'm going to step back before I cloned it, and I'm going to do filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'll blur it about that much. Okay? Click OK. So here's my history palette thing, the thing I do. I deleted a layer. I was playing around with text earlier, and I blurred it. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to step back before I blurred it. So I'm stepping back in history before I blurred it, but I'm going to click right in this little empty well, and this sets the source for my history brush. So my history brush is getting from the Gaussian blurred step in history, and so when I paint, I'll be painting the blurred part. Okay. I hope that makes it understandable how the history brush works. So I can paint, so I'm painting in the future, or I could paint, click back here, and I'm painting back before I blurred. See that? Right? So the history brush. The art history brush, I just got to tell you, is weird. I'll just tell you it's weird. I've seen some nice work. If you ever Google and you can see somebody do some nice work on YouTube and all that, it's kind of a crazy brush. The next thing I want to talk about, well, it's the eraser tool. We got three: eraser tool, background eraser, and the magic eraser. Okay. So the eraser tool, I'll just make it a little bit bigger so we can see. And of course, this is a brush too, and it's attached to the brush palette and has the opacity and flow and blending and all the other stuff that all the other brushes have. So I'm using it and I'm getting red. The reason why is because I have a locked background layer. If you look at my layers palette, I open up this image and it's background and it's locked. Okay. Usually that's what happens when you open up a document that's not a Photoshop document. But even Photoshop documents can have a locked background. And a locked background, so when I erase the foreground, I fill with the background color, which happens to be red. If I hit D on my keyboard, or hit this button here, the default color button, and you can see it says D at the end. This button here and X switches. Okay. And so if I have white, this is my foreground color, this is my background color. And so if I have white as my background color and I erase to that. Okay. It's not really what I want to do, so I'm just going to step back. And what I want to do is we have transparency in Photoshop, okay? And if I double click this layer, I get the new layer dialog box, and I can give it a name. I can change its color and blending mode and opacity. I just want to unlock it. And that's how you unlock a layer, just by double clicking on the word that says background. So now when I erase the transparency. This is what this gray and white checkerboard is in the Adobe world. It's transparency. Okay. So the eraser tool, it erases and it's gone. We have the background eraser, and I can kind of click on there, and it should only erase what I'm clicking on. Right? It should. And it's erasing that blue color, because that's what I'm clicking on. Just kind of click here, and let's see what it does. See that kind of, yeah, does it right. Not that good a tool. And I got a magic eraser, and when I click on something, it erases and it's gone. I never use the eraser tools, hardly ever. Maybe once because once you erase something, it's gone for good. And Photoshop has a much better way of getting transparency or removing objects from your file. And that relates to, we're going to move from the toolbar to this layers palette just for a second, because I want to explain what we're going to do. So this is a layer, okay? And we have some features for layers. We can link layers, we can add layer styles to them, drop shadows and things. We'll learn all this stuff. I can add adjustments, make them brighter, darker, brightness and contrast, exposure. I can make a folder so I can group more layers together. This is the create new layer button. And I can delete layers with my trash can. But this button right here is what I want to talk about for a minute, because it's what I do instead of erasing, and it's called masking. And I clicked the mask, and it made a mask on my layer. And what this is transparency. The masking is transparency. Here's the picture, all my pixels of the model. Here's the mask. They are linked together. So if I move one, the other one moves with it, or I transform it, they do it. I can unlink them so I can move one without moving the other. And of course, my layer has my eyeball to turn off. But now I have a mask. If I come over to my picture, and I'm going to use a paintbrush, because how you work with a layer mask is that you paint black mask, white reveals, and gray does something in between. And while you're masking, you can only work in grayscale, okay? Either white, black, or some value in between, okay? So you still get the same feature about getting transparency and removing things, but I can close this document, come back to it next year, open it up, and bring it back. You know, in case you make a mistake and you get rid of somebody's ear or something like that, all I have to do is paint white and bring it back. Okay? And this is a brush, so I got all the different brush shapes. I got the brush sizes, the brush hardness. Let's just make it a little bit harder so we can see. Right? White reveals, mask, black mask. Okay. And this is what we do instead of erase. We don't erase because we can always bring it back if we need to, because it's here. We can save this setting and apply it other places. The mask is very powerful, and we'll talk about mask has its own features, its own palette. The mask has its own palette, and I can play with the mask, like the opacity of the mask, the feathering of the mask, and all kinds of things. So masking. So I'm just here to tell you about masking and moving from the toolbar to the palettes, because I just wanted to explain what is better than erasing. Okay. I can always take my mask, drag it into the trash can, and I can apply it, or I can delete it, or I can cancel. I'm just going to delete it because I don't want the mask at the moment. Okay. So the eraser tool. So the next tool, we got a couple. We got the paint bucket tool, and I think every program has a paint bucket tool. I think even Windows Word has a paint bucket tool. 3D material drop tool, that's interesting. If we have our time, I will show you 3D. It's not really on this schedule, but you never know. The gradient tool. Let's go to a blank page. Got that one. Let's close that there. See, this is our tab viewing in Photoshop. You can see, I have all the tabs. Everyone says it's telling me, well, the name of it. You can tell I didn't name it. The percentage of view I am, what layer I'm on, its color space, and this little asterisk right here tells me whether means I haven't saved it. This little X will let me close it, and it's going to ask me, do I want to save? And no, I don't want to save that. Okay, and you can see each window has its own tab as I go along. Okay. Gradient. I was looking for, not that one. There we go. That's what I was looking for. And back to how I open it up. The gradient tool. I open up here to go up to the gradient tool. We've got the options. The gradient. This is my gradient picker. So I got basic gradient, all kinds of different colors. Iridescent. Some beautiful gradients. Okay. This is just the view of the palette, how it looks: small, thumbnail, large, list, text only. If I can make it my own gradient, make a new gradient. But what I really want to show you, of course, we have linear, radial, angle, reflective, and diamond. Blending modes we'll get into one day. The opacity, whether it's reverse, whether it has transparency in it. And dithering is which makes little dots, little pixels, and that's how the color blends together. If you don't have dithering on, you end up seeing banding of the colors. But with dithering, the colors blend together by having pixels of the same color next to each other. Okay, what I really want, though, is the gradient editor. And you can see I've chosen this rainbow gradient. Let's use it for now first, and then we'll look at the... and there's my gradient. And how it works, when I click, you can see the color on the left here and the color on the right. Well, it's kind of hard because this picks up a little bit more similar. There, there's red and green. So I have a red on the red on the left, green on the right. So how it works, first place I click drops the color on the left. As I drag and release my mouse, it drops the color on the right, and the gradient blends between. I can start way out here and go way out here, and have that kind of, I can do it really short. Right? The gradient. And of course, as I said, I have radial, angle, reflective, and diamond, I think. Yeah, diamond, that's this one. Okay, let's go back here. But what I like in my gradient editor is I can make my own gradients. So that's how I can do that. So you can see this is my gradient editor down here. Let's just zoom in a little bit on it. There we go. And these are color stops. Okay, I can click on the color. I can give it a color. I can change its color. Let's bring up my color picker up here. Let's just give it a blue or green. Okay, click OK. Talking about color in my color picker, I just want to show you a couple of things here. We talked about this earlier, that this exclamation mark tells me that the color that I chose won't print. And if I want a print color, I would choose there. This little dialog box is telling me this is not a web safe color. And if I wanted a web safe color, I would click there. Okay. I didn't want to change, take us away from what we were doing, but I just wanted to show you those little icons, what they mean. Okay, and so I'm back here to my gradient editor, and so I can change its location. Of course, this is 0%. This one here is at 100%. I can click and add another one, like that. This one, when I click, it's taken over the color that I have as my foreground color, the green. Let's change that to blue. And it changed because I had that selected. That's why if nothing's selected, I can change the colors without. Okay, what else I want to talk about? Well, let's just click my stop here. Then I have to pick the color. Oh, okay. There we go. And colors. And I can move these little color stops around. Okay, when I click on the color stop, you see I get this little diamond between them all, which shows me how I can blend, how the colors blend. Okay. If I don't want a color stop, I can just remove it. Okay. Click to create one. Okay. If I click here, it's going to be red again. But if I want one to take over, be a colored stop right here, but take over that same color, if I hold down the Option key, when I click to add my color stop, the color stop shows up but retains the same color where it was placed. See that? It's an Option. There. Okay. Otherwise, my color is green, and when I click one, I'll make it green. Okay. So you can move these around. You can drag them down to get rid of them. Click on them. You can change its location. You can delete them by this way too. You can change the color, the blending spots in between them. Okay, so these stops on top are transparency. So I can click and I can have it fade out, and I can change its location with all the same as the color stops, right? You can change its location by typing it in there. So you can have it rated 25% or 50%. Same with my opacity, and I can take the opacity down. And you can see on my gradient, now I have an opacity on it. Let's move these a little away from it. So let's put another opacity stop there. Let's take that one up a bit. There we go. Because I still want some of that red there. There we go. Put another one here, and let's just bring that one up. There we go. So you can create your own, and then you can save them. New, this is my own. Give it a name, click new, and it'll reside at the bottom. Here's one here I made earlier. Okay. If I say custom new, there's another one. Okay. The gradient tool, the gradient editor. Okay, let me just back out of here. Let's hit OK. Let's turn this into a normal layer. Command A and delete. There we go. Because I want to show you my gradient. That should have transparency in the center. There we go. The gradient tool and the gradient editor. Okay, the next tools, the blur, sharpen, and smudge tool, the dodge, burn, and sponge tool. Smudge and sponge are for minute touching, photo retouching. Okay, let's go to my model here, and I'll just show you what these tools do. So the first tool we'll talk about is the blur tool. Okay, again, it's a brush, so it has all the same brush settings as all the other brushes. It has a strength, that's how it's controlled. I'll leave it at 100 just so you can see the effect. I can sample all layers, and I can use my pressure sensitive tablet if I had one. Okay, so I'm just going to take my paintbrush and paint over her eye, and you can kind of, there, I'll just zoom in on it a little bit. And you kind of see how it's getting blurred. I'll just back that up again. And so, you know, you may not want to blur her eyes, but you may want to blur these lines under here, you know. quick way to do some photo retouching. Okay, the blur tool. The next tool down the line is the sharpen tool. You can take that, and what sharpening does is it increases the difference between light and dark pixels. It makes the darker pixels lighter. I mean, the darker pixels darker and the lighter pixels lighter. And you kind of see, you can see the two. See how I'm increasing, giving it more, looks like it's more texture. So now the pixels, each individual pixel, where a light pixel is next to a dark pixel, it's increasing that, the difference between the light and the dark. Okay, sharpening. And of course, you can over sharpen, and I keep on, and that turns the pixels just to red, green, and blue. See that? But you can see how I can, whoops. You can see how I can add some nice effect to her eye just by adding a little sharpness. And let's do this one here too, just because I started. Okay. And again, you can overdo it, like I might have done there. But anyways. Okay, and we got the smudge tool, which lets you smudge. And then it goes, it has a strength, and my strength is, well, took down to 27. And, I could just smudge. Smudge that so it's gone. Doesn't look very good, but that's what it does. And if I take the pressure up to 100, you can see I can smudge, make it like liquid. The smudge tool. Okay, the next tool is the dodge, burn, and sponge tool. Okay. So what the dodge tool, and of course it has a strength also, and it has exposure actually, because what this tool does is where I brush, I can add highlights. Let's add a nice highlight down there, middle of her nose. See that? I have midtones and I have my exposure up quite high so you can see the effect. Usually I'd be working at a lower exposure down in the 20s to build the effect up gradually. Okay, it's just higher just so you can see the effect. And I'm working on the midtones, so you can work on the shadows, the highlights. Okay, and that's the dodge tool. The burn tool, I guess, does the opposite, and I can paint, add a little shadow to it, darken the pixels I paint on. Add a highlight down the center and burn the edges, and I can make her nose look like it's more pointed, standing out a little bit more. You can add highlight to the cheekbones. That looks kind of weird. I've overdone it again, but that's what these do. And the next tool is the sponge tool, and that will desaturate or saturate colors. And you can see I can desaturate. It's on the desaturating setting right now, and I'm removing the color from her lips. See? When I remove, and what you get when we remove the color is gray, or gray tones. Whoops, excuse me. And my options for this are saturate or desaturate. That was on desaturate. I'll go to saturate. Moving on their lips again. And so saturate, you can see how I can saturate the colors. Make them more pink. Whoops. Try to stay within the lines. So these, as I said, these last 6 tools, my sponge, burn and dodge tool, and the blur, sharpen, and smudge tool. For photo retouching, just find minute tools. If I wanted to do it drastically to the whole image, there's much easier ways to do it than just brushing on my blur or my sharpen. Okay. The next tool in the toolbar, this tool, let's just zoom in on this a little bit, is my pen tool. This is a vector drawing tool. Okay. Vector, and I don't know if you ever heard the difference between vector and raster. When computer graphics, we're dealing with either vector or raster. Okay. Vector is a PostScript language. It's why we can print 9-point font from our computer. Before that, we were printing dot matrix. This all went down between Steve Jobs and the people at Adobe. And when they made the first Macintosh computer, they needed to be able to print. They wanted to have a desktop computer so you can print right from your desktop. We couldn't do that before. So Adobe and Macintosh created PostScript. Well, Adobe created it for PostScript by the request of the Apple computer and Steve Jobs so that you could print right from your computer. And PostScript language is what the pen tool, what Illustrator is based on. Photoshop lets you use with PostScript or vector data inside Photoshop. And how that works, what you're looking at is this model here. And this model is a Photoshop document with a bunch of pixels. It has, how many? Let's see. Image size. It has 2,912 pixels by 4,368 pixels. Okay. And each pixel is a color. It's either opaque or transparent. So, but vector data or text or shapes is a PostScript language. So I get the pen tool and I click and it puts an anchor point. I move my cursor, click again, drops another anchor point and joins the two anchor points with a path. I click, one more. I click and drag and I get what they call Bezier handles, which gives me a curved anchor point. I click again, another straight one. I click and drag, I get a curved one on that side. And I go back to the beginning to where I started, and my pen is a little circle next to my pen, and I close my path. So this is vector data right here, okay? Vector data, it's on its own layer in Photoshop. Okay, where the image is, every pixel holds data. All the data for this shape that I created is only held in each anchor point. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The anchor point holds the information for the path. Is it a curved path, straight path? Does the path have a stroke on it? What color is the fill, the length, and all that? And over here now I can control my path are my settings. Create a shape or a path. What a path is just the vector data. A shape has a fill and a stroke applied to it. So I can fill it with a color. I can give it a stroke. There you go. It's big enough. Okay, I can change the stroke to a dotted stroke. I can create my own dot dash. I can work with the corners. All kinds of things. I can choose the length and the width of each one. I can draw more. Just like my selection tools, I can create new ones, combine, subtract from, intersect, overlap. I can create a stacking order, alignment of my shapes. I can create a stacking order, one object on top of another object. But what I have here is a vector data, vector shapes. This document was a print document created at 300 pixels an inch, and that's how this picture will print. This red box with a black stroke will print at 1200 pixels per inch on a PostScript printer. On your inkjet printer, it'll still print as crisp as possible vector data. Vector data can be resized without losing any resolution. I can blow this shape up 100 times and it'll look exactly the same. It'll be just as crisp. This photograph, if I blow this photograph up 100 times, it'll be very pixelated, as you probably maybe seen in your life. You know, photo you got from the web and you try to print it, it looks pretty bad. So the pen tool creates vector shapes. We have other pen tools. I have a free form drawing pen tool where I can just click and I can just draw any shape and it'll fill in for me. Well, it won't fill in. I'll have to go back to the beginning. And you always have to go back to the beginning. That's okay. And I didn't do it very well. And of course, as I draw the free form, and when I go back to the beginning, you can see that circle there, and I can release, and I got a closed path. Okay, we have, of course, my curve one that helps me make perfect curves. Do that. And it just, wherever I click it, makes a nice perfect curve. Okay. And you see how it's overlapping and it's subtracting from one another? I mean, that's what happens. But that's another lesson altogether. The pen tool, making vector shapes. We also have an option for my pen tool. Let's just go back to the normal pen tool we've got. If I take the add anchor point tool, I can add anchor points. If I take the subtract anchor point tool, as you probably guessed, I can subtract anchor points. The other tool is the convert anchor point tool, and I can click on a straight anchor point. Well, this is a curved one. I can click on it, click and drag to make it curved. I can take a curved one, make it straight. Make that one straight. Make this one straight and make that one straight. Okay. So curve. The convert anchor point tool. Go back to my pen tool. I have a setting on mine which I use all the time that lets me auto delete, auto add and delete. So it knows even when I have the pen tool selected. Let me just get rid of that box. It knows if I'm on an anchor point or on a path, it lets me add an anchor point. If I'm on an existing anchor point, it goes to the delete anchor point tool. The pen tool. Okay, let's just throw that in the trash. The next thing, the text tool. The text tool, when I click with the text tool, T, we have horizontal, vertical, and two masking text tools. You know, if you take a text tool and you click, whoops, wrong one. Let's do that. If you ever choose a text tool, when you type and you hit OK or return, you just get these marching ants. You've used the mask tool. And I will show you that one day. But you really don't need that tool. That's not the tool you want. You want the solid one, your horizontal or vertical. Okay, you type. It types there and it fills up well with the word lorem ipsum. And lorem, well, I'll explain that. It has nothing to do with Photoshop. But I'll explain lorem ipsum one day. Okay, and let's just type that. Okay. So as long as it's spelled correctly, you hit the checkbox at the top. Okay. If it's not spelled correctly, you can fix your spelling. The only time you need to select the text is when you want to correct the spelling. So I'm going to prove that the text is not selected anymore. I can hold down the command key, move it around. But what I want to know, as long as I have the text tool, there's the text tool. Okay. I'm on the text layer. All these options for the text is available for me. Okay. The font. Photoshop has a WYSIWYG font menu. What you see is what you get. So I can see what the font looks like. And of course it updates there relatively quickly. Let's just so all kinds of fonts. Of course, I'm a font freak. I have lots on here, and I could spend a lot of time playing around with fonts. Okay, we have the different types. Some fonts have a bold, regular, italic, all kinds of things. What we have here is the font size. Okay, you can see it goes from 0 to 72. Anything bigger than that, you just click and you type it in, or use the scrubber. And you can see here when I put my cursor over top of this icon in front of the dialog box, it turns to a finger with a double arrow. Not all dialog boxes have it, but quite a few do. When you see a little icon there, you put your cursor on. That means, and I'll just back out so you can see, that I can click there and I can change the font. Okay, you can see here on the font size, so I click, I can go change it up or down. Okay, this is the edge of my font. Do I want a crisp edge, a smooth edge? And this relates to printing and whether it's going to the web or video. Is it going to be in video? Is it going to fly across the screen? Those various things. My basic alignment, left, right, justified. I have a character palette, a paragraph palette, which lets me do a lot more alignment features and space after and all the features I want of a true paragraph palette. This lets me change the color. I can warp it. I'll show you that later. This brings up the character palette, and this turns it 3D, and I'll show you that another day. So this character palette has the normal things, and of course they have all icons in front of them. Let's just see that, and that icon lets me scrub every one. Okay. Let's add another line of text. I just need another one. That and this. Okay, and I'm going to hit the checkbox because it's spelled correctly, and then now I can change the font size, whatever I want. I can scrub it down. This here is leading, and what leading is the space between the baselines, the bottom of the text, the base. If I click there, you can see that little gray bar is the baseline. Okay, I'm going to unselect that to edit it. With that, while this is there, I can't change the font or the font size or the leading. Okay, I can deal with just certain things, the kerning, which is the space between the letters. Okay, so what I want to do is, you see, I'm going to change this rate. Well, we'll talk about later. This is leading is the space between the two baselines that I was showing you. And if I put it to auto, auto is 120% of what the font is. Okay, let's just back out a little bit here. And you can see the font's 193 points, so 120% of that is the space between my baselines. Okay, you can make it whatever you want. And again, this is scrubbing, so I can scrub back a little bit. Get it to close where I want, and I can put the exact number in. That's baseline shift. This value here that has a negative 75 to it is called tracking. And this is something you got to watch, because the last time I was playing with it, I had a negative 75 tracking, and it doesn't, when I choose my next text, could be the next day, next week, it's going to take over what settings I had in the character palette previously. So if things don't look right when you're using the text tool, come to the character palette, make sure your tracking, your leading is set to 0, your horizontal, vertical shift is at 100%, everything is 0, those two are at 100, except for your font size. And then your tracking, usually set to auto. Okay, what this is kerning, and if I put my cursor between two letters and I increase or the tracking, it increases the space between the two letters. Okay, positively or negatively. I can use optics, where it looks at it and examines and it decides itself what it thinks should be the track kerning. Okay, these ones are nice. Usually you see that in script fonts that you want them kerned properly, because sometimes they don't look properly and there's a space between the letters, which kind of messes things up. That is kerning, the space between the letters. We have horizontal. We're going to get the checkbox. We have horizontal and vertical scaling. I have baseline shift. This will take, if you take one letter or one, you can move it above or below the baseline. Okay. Baseline shift. A lot of times you see like the ST or the RD of thirds, and that you see that up there, the first shift. Okay, and of course the color. These here are what they call faux fonts, and I can take my font and make it a bold, or I can give it an italic. But usually you'll find you'll run into troubles by using these because sometimes they won't print properly, or if you copy and paste from one file to the next, the faux fonts won't work. So if you really need, unless you really need that, but if you need a faux font, I mean a bold font, I would just choose bold. Or this is all caps, this is small caps, this is subscript, superscript, underline, strike through. These are what the open type, these are ligatures, and I will show you those one day when we talk about printing and another program called InDesign. Okay, the character palette, and you creates its own layer. It's vector data. This will print very crisp. Okay. Text on the text tool. Okay, I'm going to drop down. I'm going to skip this tool and drop down to this tool so I can explain that tool, if that makes sense to you. So this is a custom shape tool. You know, we were using the pen tool to make vector shapes. This one has custom shapes. Well, we have built-in rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, triangle, polygon, the line tool, and a custom shape tool. You know, we all know what a rectangle and ellipse looks like. I'll show you the custom shape tool. And the custom shape tool has, like all the shape tools have options. Am I going to create a shape or a path, or pixels would be just like painting? Does it have a fill? Of course, I can give it no fill if I want to. I can give it a textured fill or a patterned fill, a gradient fill, or a solid fill. I can give it a stroke. I can give the stroke a color, no stroke, gradient stroke. Yes, I can give it a gradient stroke and a pattern stroke. Okay, but I'm going to give it no. Well, we'll give it a solid red stroke. Let's just go 3 pixels. 3 pixels, 3 points. Pixels and points, it's the same unit of measurement. I'll give it a solid line. I can give it a dotted line. I can give its width and height already in there, but I'm not going to bother that because I'm going to draw a free form shape. And the shape I'm going to use, how about the rose? Okay. So I click and I draw a rose, and it takes over the fill and stroke that I applied to it. Okay, you can see all the anchor points. It's vector data, and all these anchor points, I can actually alter it, select each anchor point. Every anchor point is joined by a path. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's deselect it. There you go. And it's vector data coming on its own layer. Okay, it prints really crisp. I can create my own vector logos, and of course, if I had a logo and I were, something I wanted to use all the time that print really crisp, I can create one of these and make my own custom shape. Okay, and of course, now let's go back. What I wanted to talk about, that's why I got the custom shape, is the direct selection tool and this path selection tool. If I click on this, I select it. You can see I've got the path selected. Okay, I'll just click away for a second. If I take the direct selection tool, I end up clicking on individual paths or anchor points. And you can see I can click on the anchor points and move them around and alter the shape. of my rows. Okay, I can click on the Bezier handles, move them around. Okay, direct selection tool and the selection tool. And I'll back out, and you can see, of course, it came with its own layer. Okay, so we'll just deselect. There we go. And the fill and the stroke matched my settings, my fill, my red fill, my burgundy, my maroon stroke of 3 points, and and I took my shape, my custom shape tool. Well, next thing we have is the hand tool. You know, it lets me move my image around. But no matter what tool you're in, any tool, the space bar turns to the hand tool. Okay, so you don't really need to select that tool. Just hold down the space bar, and while the space bar is held down, it's the hand tool. The other tool is the rotate tool, which just rotates the view. It doesn't actually rotate the canvas. And it helps you if you want to paint, but you have a hard time painting horizontally, and it's easier for you to paint vertically, or you want to look at it on a different angle. That's this tool. And with the shift key held down, it locks to 15-degree increments. Okay. That could be, yeah, 15, yeah. Whoops. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Let's try to get this thing back there. Whoops. And then we have the zoom tool, which click and you scrub in and it zooms on where you clicked. Or you click once and it zooms in a pre-canned amount, 100% each time, I think. Hold down the option key and you zoom out. But I use keyboard commands for zooming. Okay, command 1's 100%. Command 0 fit to screen. Command plus zooms in. And command minus zooms out. Or control, depending on what operating system you're working on. Okay, that's all the tools. This button, 3 buttons down here, just brings up the toolbar editor. And you can see I can remove some of the tools. So I have all my tools that are available showing in my toolbar, but I can remove some to make my toolbar less crowded if I so do desire. I can show my intro to the toolbar and the workspace of Photoshop. We're going to be going into the palettes, will be the next lesson. But that's it. And the quick mask, I don't know if I showed you this one. This one, of course, is the F key, and it shows you the different screen modes. So the tab key hides the palettes. Command R, and when I say command, it's say control if you're a PC user, hides the ruler. And the F key gives you full mode, window mode, title bar, display. And the tab brings back the toolbars and the palettes. Okay, that's our Photoshop lesson. Well, the opening, the intro into Photoshop. Okay, the next we'll talk about all the palettes and how they work, and then we'll start having some fun, building some things. Okay, thank you.